All right, students, here we are. We are getting ready to collect some field data in the Garden of the Gods. And the first thing we're talking about right now is what we need to accomplish this research. So there's lots of other videos that explain what the research is, but in a very quick nutshell, we are going to two closed trails. They've been closed because they're redundant, and I'll talk about the wildlife philosophy there, wildlife management philosophy. But essentially with volunteer crews, we decompacted the trail surface, applied a 10 species native grass revegetation seed mix, and then we applied free city mulch, which is just chipped city trees to the top, just a very light layer. And we walked away, and we've been monitoring this ever since. That was in 2015. And I am pleased to say, again, in a nutshell, but more information exists in other videos, this dryland active revegetation is successful in the Garden of the Gods. We're going to collect our final measurements today. So we're going to use this very simple quadrat, okay? Notice that this is construction fence and some PVC tubes. I made these out of literally trash I found in my backyard. And I stop here and mention this because when you're talking about citizen science and citizen action, oftentimes we're on a low budget, right? I actually have a hard time writing a grant budget for this research because I don't really need a lot of things to make it happen. I need people and their brains and their efforts. So basically, this is to measure percent cover. We have the total quadrat area, and then we have that subdivided into equal squares. It does not matter how many squares there are, it's a simple fraction. However many squares the plant is rooted in, divided by the number of total squares that the trail surface is covering. That is the basic math we're going to do. We are going to use iNaturalist to collect species data, but we will later curate this data using these two texts. Jennifer Ackerfield is a professor at CSU, and she has created the most modern flora of Colorado in this book right here. But for the last century, no joke century, Dr. William Weber from CU Boulder has been studying the flora of Colorado, and Weber and Whitman, Colorado, Florida. Flora is also another very important dichotomous text for the botany of Colorado. Now, when we're just getting started with grasses, there's a lot to be said for the basic form. And here's another leader in our botanical environment, Jan Wingate. She works at the Denver Botanic Gardens Herbaria, and she has written several of these simple guides. They are keys to the grasses and flora of Colorado. So sometimes when you're first learning, a process of elimination is a lot easier when you start small. So these books, I've had these books for about 20 years. They're for sale for like $3. Then of course, we can't forget that there are non-native species everywhere on the landscape. This book no longer has a cover, but this is the noxious weed list for the state of Colorado. There are 3 lists with different legislative directions, which we can talk about later. List A, List B, List C. Notice the species in List C are basically naturalized in our landscape. List B, you have to have a plan in place to mitigate and prevent the spread of these species. And List A species, there is a mandate for active suppression of these species because of the damage they create in ecological settings. Most of our weeds in Colorado are from arid environments, and we are in a semi-arid environment, and so they're used to it being even harsher than here. Now, having a pencil is very helpful. You can mark your pencil with simple measurements. You can hold the pencil up when you take a photo to give perspective. This is a magnifying device so I could theoretically look at the stamens and the hairs and do some keying in the field. But with today's photographic technologies, we have found at the Colorado Native Plant Society in the Southeast chapter that it's kind of easier to take quality pictures and then come back in to a virtual meeting and expand those on the computer surface and do the identification there if it's not one we already know about. Here I have a very simple blue folder. It's very, very, very helpful when you're taking pictures out in the field that you isolate what you're taking the photo of. And so I would put my specimen, flower, grass, etc. in front of the folder and take a picture with the folder in the background. And that makes it so I can take high quality pictures in high light environments. And finally, we are going to use the quadrat on a transect. The transect is the closed trail. We are using fixed points that were randomly generated along a quadrant. So there's 1 point every 100 feet, and the point is randomly selected in those 100 feet segments. In this way, we are able to see and relate any differences in the revegetation effort between the near trailhead environment and the more remote, like far end of the trail, where the trail is disappearing and there's no access except through the trailhead. Here I am using a survey tape with English measurements, which I feel okay with because I work with citizen scientists and